So one fine day, without much of planning or something, I said, okay, I'm going to write travel books, and I'm going to write travel books primarily on India. I sat in my car and I hit the road, and I went to this region called Spiti, and I had never seen such a desolate, isolated, high altitude, cold region as Spiti. And when I was driving, there were no human beings to be seen for hours, no road signs, nothing. And I said, okay, I am lost. And this is how people get lost and never to be found again.
Welcome to another episode of The Book People, where I decode the latest developments and exciting things happening in India's media and publishing industries, and I talk to the people who are making all of this happen behind the scenes. Today, I'm talking to someone who has worn many hats over the years: sports management, engineering, photography, writing, and now bookselling. So, Ajay Jain is the founder of Kunzum, which was earlier a travel cafe, before that, it was a gallery, and now it is a series of 5 bookstores set across Delhi. So I talked to Ajay about book selling, about what publishers need to be doing to market and sell books more, how can we increase the number of readers and customers that are in India, and about the latest book selling conference that took place at Kunzum. So let's dive in to get all the details you need to know about what is happening with brick and mortar bookstores, why Amazon needs to stop giving discounts, and what his next book is going to be about. So let's dive in. Hi Ajay, welcome to the Book People.
Yeah, thank you so much. Always happy to talk books.
Yes. And I've been seeing, obviously, Kunzum has been doing, a lot of events recently. Now you have a chain of bookstores. There are all of these exciting things happening. But also Kunzum started in a very different way, right? And over the last few years, there has been this transformation of what Kunzum was, what it has become, and everything that you're doing right now. So how did that transformation take place in the first place? What was that moment where you saw an opportunity, or you kind of thought this is the direction that Kunzum now needs to take?
Yeah, actually, ever since I took to being a traveler, I realized that the traveler in me, what I discovered for myself, is both a traveler literally, and it also became a kind of in a metaphorical sense of philosophy in life. So just going back a little in history, I've had backgrounds in engineering and MBA, then I got into IT, then sports management. So I did all that. And then at the ripe age of 31, I dropped everything and I actually traveled to the UK to pursue a master's in journalism. And I came back, I worked for newspapers, I ran a newspaper of my own, a youth newspaper. And then I got into writing columns and started with tech blogging and all. So around 2007, I was at both a personal and professional crossroads. And I was wondering, okay, I need to do something else with my life. And that's when the moment came that, okay, I want to be a travel writer. So one fine day, without much of planning or something, I said, okay, I'm going to write travel books, and I'm going to write travel books primarily on India. I sat in my car and I hit the road, and I went to this region called Spiti. And when I was driving up, I drove from here to from Delhi to Manali, and after Manali, I was heading to Spiti. And I had never seen such a desolate, isolated, high altitude, cold region as Spiti. And when I was driving, there were no human beings to be seen for hours, no road signs, nothing. And I said, okay, I am lost. And this is how people get lost and never to be found again. There's no such thing as mobile signals in that region. There's no Google Maps, nothing, right? Because there's no road, there's no people, there's no network. Right. And then I kept driving and I went up a hill, and then suddenly I hit a plateau. And standing on that plateau, almost 15,000 feet above sea level, I saw a road sign heading to Kaza, which was my destination for the day. Right. And I said, like, okay, wow, okay, I'm not lost. Okay, I found my way to my destination. But when I stood on that spot and I looked around, and as far as the eye could see, it was like a horizon going into infinity. All I could see were clear blue skies, a nice cool breeze hitting me, and snow peaks all around, and there were Buddhist flags fluttering at a little kind of a like a little shrine to near where I was standing. And I said, if this is the planet, and if this is the country that I live in, I need to, this just kind of reinforces my idea that I want to be a travel writer. And I said,
you want to capture all of it in books.
Yeah, and I said, and I'm going to be discovering India by road. And in that moment, I not only found my direction to Kaza, which was my destination for the day, but I also found my direction in life. And the spot that I was standing on is called Kunzum La.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so La means
that's
high
the
altitude
origin of the name.
Yeah. So I came back, I called my blog kunzum.com. I started blogging on it. I started writing my books. And then in 2009, I set up a little gallery in Hauz Khas village, and I called it the Kunzum Gallery. On the first day itself, I sold a painting, more like a photo print, and I was excited. I said, wow, what a great business decision, right?
Yeah.
And for the next 1 year, I did not sell a single, I didn't sell a single print. I said, hey, something is wrong, because I'd done a few shows at places like India Habitat Center and a few other places. I said, okay, I need to kind of do something. And then sitting with some friends, we came up with an idea. Let's convert Kunzum Gallery into a thing called Kunzum Travel Cafe. The idea was that we create some seating over there. We allow people to come in, give them free Wi-Fi, give them some books to read. And we introduced coffee with some special cookies and tea, with the idea, pay what you like.
Yeah.
So we launched that, and lo and behold, it became almost an overnight success. People were coming all over. We got huge media coverage. Social media was still relatively new, but we were all over social media. And then people came and asked that, hey, can we do some events here? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And before we knew it, it became a community of communities, with people coming and doing all kinds of events. There could be music gigs, book launches, travel talks, debates, you name it, it happened there, right? We had a little brush with Bollywood also. We had the launch of the screenplay of My Brother Nikhil, where the filmmaker On Air and the actors Juhi Chawla and Sanjay Suri were there. And then we also got a little blink and you miss footage in this movie called Listen Amaya, which was shot with Farooq Sheikh. And yeah, so it was great fun. I continued traveling. I continued my books, my photography, my blogging, and boom, and then everything came to a standstill during the pandemic.
Yeah, because all of this was pre-pandemic, right? I was just going to ask, especially when it's, called a travel cafe, the point is traveling. Obviously, lockdown, none of that is happening.
Yeah.
So then I think you pivoted then a little.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, actually, even a little, I have a philosophy in life that just because you're good at something and you're successful at it, you can't keep doing the same thing all your life. Okay. Right. So I said, even before the pandemic, I was kind of reconsidering, okay, I've done enough of traveling while there's no end to travel. I need to explore other genres of writing. Maybe I need to make some other choices, but I knew I wanted to be in the creative field. That was for sure. And then when the pandemic came, because everything was at a pause, it just gave me reason to kind of further reflect. But during the pandemic, I continued writing my books. I published a couple of books during the pandemic, but I kept thinking, hey, how do I really take these books to market? And my learning was that whether you're publishing it under your own imprint, whether it's a big publisher like a Penguin or a Harper, or it's an independent publisher, the fact is every author needs to market themselves. And then I said, okay, I have this brand called Kunzum Travel Cafe. Can I make it a chain but there was no business viability. I thought, okay, let's make it a chain of reading rooms. But again, the numbers didn't add up. Then I even toyed with the idea of creating a larger than life book club, like a kind of an opera kind of a book club, right? And then I said, I started off also, and we got a lot of good response. But I said, look, this is again too virtual. And I'm happy being in a face-to-face situation, despite all of us being at home with all the uncertainty looming, upon us. That there was nobody could say when the pandemic would end. But and then I don't know there was a moment that came. I said, hey, you know what? I already know how to build a community called the Kunzum Travel Cafe, right? Let's build a bookshop around that.
Hmm.
And then that's when we pivoted. And that was kind of late 2021. And me being me, the idea came to my mind. It kind of, I played with it in my mind for a bit. When I say a bit, it could be as little as just a few hours or a day or two. And then I started running with the idea. And everybody was around me like, hello, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm opening bookstores, but what do you know about bookstores?
Yeah.
I said, I learn, right?
No, and especially during the pandemic, right? Because there was so much discussion about how badly like brick and mortar bookstores were affected and their sales had gone down, and everyone was buying off of Amazon, obviously, and there were bookstores that having to shut down, and there were all of these issues. And in the middle of that, starting bookstores, and I think now you've started 5, right?
Yeah, so we
my
initial idea was to open 100, but then we launched with 5 almost simultaneously within a very short span. And next thing I knew that I want to just focus on these 5 for the time being, because the initial idea of what they would look like, and when we went to the drawing board, the way they came out, I realized that, okay, we can't just mindlessly replicate, because if you've created something which is being appreciated even at the initial stages, we have to be very careful that in that race for expansion, right, we don't lose the essence of what we're being liked for. Yeah. Right, because scalability always comes with that challenge, especially in a country like India, where people, where talent is always, like not easy to come by, right? So currently we stand at 5 stores. Within these, we are evolving. We're doing, we're ideating. There've been kind of expansions within the stores. We are doing something on something digitally also. So we've got a whole bunch of things happening. But this is how Kunzum, in its pivoted state happened. And all 5 stores are in Delhi, right? Like currently, they're in Delhi region. Yeah. Are you planning to expand to other cities like Mumbai, where I am from? Yeah, I would like to. Right, but I want to be sure that number one, see, one thing I'm sure, I want to enjoy the process, right? And I don't want things like finances, logistics, people management, and stuff like that to take the fun out of the business. If I'm just kind of running around trying to make things happen and just firefighting and so deeply involved in operations that both the reader in me and the writer in me suffers, then the whole idea of being in this space is lost. So I think a lot of things have happened kind of on their own, right? Opportunities have opened up. And I'm sure that a suitable expansion opportunity will come our way, just a matter of time. And we'll do it in a way that we enjoy it and it's also feasible. So right now, how actively are you involved in sort of the day-to-day, selling processes or the events of the 5 bookstores? Well, I managed to get 4 hours of sleep. The rest of the time I'm doing this. Okay. Yeah, people around me are like, Ajay, you're working all the time. I said, look, it's what I'm trying to build, fortunately and unfortunately, it's like all in my head, right? And I can't, and a lot of it is also ideation in progress. I'm also learning a lot, and I need to be in the thick of the action, right? And I'm actually totally hands-on, totally involved. And this was, in fact, before the pandemic, I'd actually also told myself that one thing I will not do is kind of set up ventures where I have to hire people. I'll stay like a kind of a lone ranger, whatever I can do in my own capacity. And now I'm running an operation, which is the most complex operation I've run in my whole career. Yeah, because especially if you are scaling and you have 5 bookstores, you plan to have 100. I mean, how many hours in a day would you need to run 100 bookstores yourself, right? The thing is, like I always say, after opening these 5, we might be 100 in my lifetime, we might be 20, or we might stay 5. I'm perfectly fine with it, as long as, like I said, it's viable and it's the process is enjoyable. Yeah, no, definitely that makes sense. And what you said about building community as well, because earlier I had interviewed Leonard Fernandez, who has the bookstore in Goa, right? And he also talks a lot about how, especially for brick and mortar bookstores and independent bookstores, the most important thing is building that community, right? Because that is what kind of gets readers in, and people sort of visit the bookstore more, buy the books. So obviously community is a big part of, Kunzum as well. And you're doing a lot of events. I think
that is one of the main things that you're doing as well, where each of these bookstores have become, event spaces. So do you pick and choose what kind of events you want to do? Are there specific events that are, more exciting or more interesting to you? Or are you just like any event is great, any artistic event that kind of brings people in and creates that community is great for Kunzum?
So when people approach us for events or we come up with ideas for our events, so most events we say yes to.
Okay.
Right? It could be a book reading, a book launching, launch. It could be a book signing. It could be theater. It could be live music. It could be a talk. It could be anything. We say yes to almost everything.
What do you say no to? That's a good question.
Yeah, actually, we've learned a few things. Like in our earlier avatar in Hauz Khas village, when we were running the Kunzum Travel Cafe, these poetry slams were very popular. Yes. Right, and a lot of young people used to come, and we were okay with it. But we did a few now also. I said like, wow, a lot of people come, but unfortunately, the audience that came for them didn't really buy books, and because they kind of travel in big numbers, they actually occupied the whole store, which became inconvenient to shoppers. Right, so events like those where we feel it's obstructive to our normal customers, because our event spaces are kind of integral to the whole bookstore. They're not like two separate spaces, right? So we need to make sure that customers who walk in, they don't get inconvenienced, right? So we say yes to almost every event, but gradually we are becoming a little more discerning about where we kind of get totally involved. So what we say, okay, so for a lot of events, we say use us as a venue. We'll provide you the ground support, whatever you need. You need the seating, you need the projectors, the mics, the coffee, whatever you need. We'll take care of that. But it's really your baby. We're just a location for you, like
you're doing the logistics, but not the programming of the event.
Not the programming, not the promotions.
Like the curation, who's gonna come.
Yeah, but only so progressively. We get involved only in a few events deeply, where we feel it's of a certain significance to us, either from a PR point of view or from a sales point of view, or just because it needs to be done. Right. So some events we kind of we own and we curate, and other events we become partners. So it's kind of, again, like I said, for everything that we're doing, a lot of it is ideation in progress and learning in progress, because we're also learning a lot of things.
Of course. And ultimately, it does need to tie into the business, right? Like you said, I mean, you're doing events, obviously, because events are great, but then you want to bring in people or encourage people who will also buy the kind of books that you are.
Yeah, but again, we don't follow like a strict formula that, okay, if an event happened and 50 people came, and did we get X revenue or did we not get X revenue? Because I look at things very differently, and that was my learning with the Kunzum Travel Cafe. Like that whole pay what you like, right? Philosophy, not just for the coffee, but even for the events and people wanting to use a space. I've kind of brought that whole thing here because that itself created so much PR that money couldn't buy, and that also kind of created such a kind of a fondness for the brand. In fact, when we launched, I told my team, I said, look, if we didn't have the legacy of the Kunzum Travel Cafe, and we just launched as an unknown brand coming into, and we had done exactly the same thing that we're doing today, the same kind of stores, the same kind of events, right? I said, look, the uptake might have been a little slower because people would have been wondering, who's this brand? But the moment we use the brand Kunzum, because especially the Delhi region is very familiar with the brand Kunzum, it actually gave us that little head start in terms of familiarity and that brand fondness.
No, I totally understand, because it's not also about immediate sales, right? It's not about, okay, how much money did I get today and how many books did I sell today by doing this event? But like you said, you're building your brand and you're building Kunzum as this space, right, where a lot of events can happen, where people in Delhi, when they kind of think of planning an event that is around books or anything artistic or creative, they will think of Kunzum as a venue to go to, right? So I think obviously,
because I'm sure what prompted you to have this conversation with me was not just because there's a new guy in town selling books, right? There's something you're doing beyond just selling books, right? And that's what probably like kind of got you thinking, hey, let's interview him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it was the booksellers conference,
Yeah,
which also happened recently, because
yeah,
that again was a, talking about events, I think that was something that you also obviously were programming in
yeah.
a big way, and that was a big event that kind of happened. So I also wanted to talk to you about that. How did you come up with the idea of the conference? Because I think in India, obviously we have, different literary festivals, we have sort of events and festivals, but conferences as such, industry conferences, like
Yeah.
we have obviously the publishers next conference, which happens, once a year, has been happening
Hmm.
for the last few years, but other than that there has been nothing really as
Yeah,
such
yeah.
in India. So what was your thought process behind the booksellers conference?
So I think the books industry, the publishing industry, is one industry where we are competitors and we are not competitors,
Yeah,
right? Because it's not like you're buying a refrigerator or you're buying a car that you'll buy
yeah,
only one of it, right? Or even if you go to buy shirts, for example, okay, you just want to buy one or two or three shirts, right? Books are something where there's no limit. You go to a
yeah,
bookstore to buy a book and you could come back with 10 books, and it's one industry where all the brands, right, are on the same bookshelves, right,
yeah,
and they're next to each other, and so many people working in the publishing industry, right? Actually, if everybody's alma mater, right?
yeah.
There are people who worked at Penguin, they worked at Harper, and they worked at
Yeah,
Pan
it's
Mac.
very close knit, and it's
Yeah,
also like for a reader, if they buy a
yeah,
HarperCollins book, that is
yeah,
good, because then they will also
yeah,
buy the Penguin book and the Zubaan
yeah,
book
yeah.
and the
So yeah,
Rupa book. So
so that there's like a very kind of a fuzzy line between
yeah,
people being competitors and ex-colleagues and future colleagues,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
but very importantly, I think all this talk that oh, we're not selling enough books, and I looked at some figures, they're all unconfirmed figures, but the industry is not really kind of expanding at the rate it should be. I think we keep complaining that the market is not expanding enough, right? Not enough books are being sold, and that's why we brought this conference together and we called it Bookselling Reimagined. The idea was that at the bigger picture level, let's talk about what can we do to expand readership in society,
yeah,
right? And at the micro level, let's talk about tools and tips and tricks on how to sell, how authors and publishers and books can be promoted. So in the latter, we talked about social media strategies, about building communities, about building newsletters, advertising, and all that stuff. But at the bigger picture, at the bigger level, right, we spoke about what do we need to do to get more people talking books, to remind people that there are books that exist, they should be reading books,
yeah,
the value of books, the joy of books, right? So that was the idea. We made a start. These are conversations that are going to be unending, number one. And number two, like with every other conference of this nature, right? Everything right was said on the stage and off the stage. And now how do you implement them into action, right? Now, that's always a challenge,
yeah.
right? So, but you don't start talking about, along these lines, the action will not happen.
Yeah, no, and what you said about, the all the organizations or companies in the industry kind of being very intermingled is very true. And especially when it comes to sales, I think, for example, in North America, obviously there is like one database, right? Or there is
Yeah,
sort of one organization that is tracking all the sales, that is kind of,
yeah,
it's a little bit more transparency, I think, of
yeah,
which books are doing well, which books are not doing well, sales numbers. That kind of also allows the industry to kind of function and know what's going on. I
yeah,
think in India, it's a little bit more scattered, especially when it comes to sales, because, and this happens even when, say, we are talking to readers, right? Or a
yeah,
lot of time writers or people who want to enter and work in the publishing industry,
yeah,
where the love for books is so strong that it kind of overpowers their ability to see the books as products.
yeah,
Yeah, ultimately these are products, they need to be sold, there are sales
yeah,
figures, some do well, some don't do well, and sometimes there is a very logical reason and sometimes there just isn't,
yeah,
and how do you kind of make sense of all of it? So I think having this kind of a conversation also brings in more of a transparency where, different companies are sort of able to be like, okay, this is what is going on, and these are kind of the trends, which we kind of know but also don't know, and there is a lot of guesswork involved to make it more, I think, factual, if that makes sense. to sort of be able to collate data to be like, okay, this is the information, we're all sharing this information, and now how can we use it to sell more books, right? So is this a conference that you're thinking of making an annual thing?
So while I don't have a time like a schedule in mind, but the important thing is don't keep it just an annual thing, right? There need to be kind of follow-up sessions, even if they're like smaller roundtables, smaller discussions,
Right. Like
both
constant conversations.
because if you don't
follow
keep having these constant conversations, like we're going to have this, annual jamboree, we're all going to say the right things, and then we're going to forget it till the next one. And because I've seen enough conferences, not just in the publishing space, but in so many sectors, and that's exactly what happens. The intent is good, right? But if you don't kind of keep at it, people forget, because in that, in their daily kind of schedules, people just forget. And the thing is, everybody knows what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not happening. Whatever the constraints, whatever the hesitations, but it's not happening because all the people from the publishing industry on stage, they were all saying the right things. And I was looking at them, I said, look, if you're saying this, why don't you execute them? Because as a bookseller, I need that marketing support from publishers, but I'm not getting that.
Yeah. What is an example of this? When you say as a bookseller, you need certain things from publishers. What are those things that you think booksellers need or, bookstores need today?
So do we have like 5 days for that?
Okay, one thing. What is one thing that?
No, I think it's everything. Because right from marketing collaterals to paying enough attention to a book in terms of its publicity. When I say publicity, building social media campaigns, building a following around that, maybe building some newsletters around for the author, doing some advertising, even if it's lower cost digital advertising, right? Even providing us information for us to put on social media, providing us beyond those AI sheets that they send, which is just like a more of a descriptor. Send us some teasers, send us some author bites on videos. There's so many things that need to be done. The problem is that the publishers end up looking at marketing for most authors as, as HarperCollins or as Speaking Tiger or at Penguin, right? I am doing this marketing in general, but each book is like a product. Yeah, it's like a product in itself. It's a brand in itself. It needs its own brand management, right? It can't be part of 50 books or 500 books.
Yeah, right? It needs its own campaign because each book will also have a separate audience. So are you reaching that audience? Are you pulling out, the important things about that book? And also recently, I've been also seeing that, because also marketing budgets for different books vary, right? With publishers, depending on obviously how much money the publishers have, how big they are. But also depending on how well do they think the book is going to do. So because they have an idea, okay, like a celebrities book or, like a book where they think that this is going to have great sales, clearly putting in more money, more marketing sort of efforts into promoting that book. Whereas a book that for them is, sort of a small fish, there's also not a lot of marketing money or effort put into that book. So I think it also kind of, it's self-prediction, right? Because they think that a book is not going to do well, there's not a lot of marketing effort, then the book doesn't do well. And a lot of authors now, we're seeing authors trying to put in their own money into doing book marketing, into making exactly these materials and bites and book trailers and trying to run ads and all of these things. So then it's also like, who is putting in the money to market the book? And then even if authors are putting in the money, then how can we help them as well, right? To market their books as well.
Because for a lot of authors, number one, they need to have the inclination to be self-marketeers, right? Then they need to have the right ideas. Then they need to have the resources to invest in those ideas, because if the publisher is not investing, right, and all the author is going to get is probably the royalties, right, and they have to recoup their investment from there. So then you have authors who are saying that, okay, I'm in it for the vanity and the joy of it, right? While I want to sell more books, even if it doesn't need to pay to keep the fires burning at home, right?
And it doesn't, right? At this point, there are rarely any authors. I don't think any author is sustaining themselves only with
and that's why I feel that maybe publishers also need to be a little more choosy in the books they publish than in the titles they pick up. Do fewer titles, but look at bigger winners, potential winners, and put your marketing weight behind it, right? But what happens is that everybody's spreading themselves too thin, and books that do make it, like, which are kind of breakout successes, right? Suddenly they keep getting all the attention, but hey, it's already a success. Like, you don't need to put in resources behind those now. You what? Why don't you invest in the other books, which are kind of good books, but which are kind of not getting their place under the sun? But
they need a little bit more of a push.
Yeah. So and the other thing and most of the marketing is actually very kind of oriented towards Indian authors, so local publishing. But that's one thing I keep telling authors and publishers. I said, look, one has to, any book is competing not with other Indian authors, but it's competing with the world's best. Because in any bookstore, any e-commerce player, the world's best books are on display, and even the most ardent of readers, right? They can only read so many books in a year, so they're going to pick and choose the best and not be driven by any form of patriotism, right? So one has to up the game, both in terms of the product itself, as well as the marketing behind it. Otherwise, why would anybody pick up books by Indian authors?
Yeah. And I think people are so used to, because obviously books that, are published in the US that kind of come into India have a lot more publicity, have a lot more visibility. So there are so many readers who don't even read Indian books, right? Because they don't even know where to start. Like, I myself have so many friends who are readers who will say, okay, yes, I read, but like, I don't know if there are any good Indian books even coming out right now. Are there even good Indian authors? And then you kind of have to give them a whole list and say, here. But for a regular reader, even if they want to read, where are they? I think that visibility isn't enough yet for them to kind of go and find those books themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we've designed our stores in a way that kind of aid discovery. And that's why we also do so many events. I think in the last 1 year since we opened, we've hosted over 700 authors, right? And so in a way, we sometimes informally use the hashtag 365-day lit fest, at Kunzum. But that's, see, we can only do so much, right? Because at the end of the day, we aren't the publishers, we are not the publishing industry, and that's where we need support from the publishers. And but I think there's some kind of either inertia or lack of resources or lack of intent, but I think the publishers are not doing justice to the authors they publish.
Yeah. I think the feedback that I've been getting from a lot of authors is also, that a little bit of dissatisfaction from, how the books are being marketed, how books are being sold. Or I think for a lot of authors, because they just want to write, they just want to write, they just want to, like, they're introverts, they don't want to do social media marketing, they don't want to build their profiles, they don't want to worry about all of this hassle. And that's a big reason why they're also going traditional, right? Because I mean, if they had that, like, the resources and the motivation to do all of these things, then they could also choose to go the self-publishing route and do a lot more things. But they want to just give the book to the publisher and be like, now it is your responsibility, go sell it. But I think
but I give this example that, on the one side you've got you got people like Da Vinci and Michelangelo's who, in their lifetimes, they reap the financial dividends and the fame dividends of their work. And then you have people like Van Gogh, right, who went unrecognized in their lifetimes, but after that, people have made billions of their works. So I said, pick and choose. Like the former were good marketeers, not just good artists, and the latter was a great artist, but not a good marketeer. So take your pick.
Exactly. I mean, to be an artist, you have to be so many things, because you have to have some amount of business acumen. You have to, like, understand contracts, know your rights. You have to, like, do marketing, you have to build a brand. So I think all of this just becomes a part of becoming a successful artist or a writer today.
Absolutely. You have to go out and market yourself.
Yeah. So since you're on the floor, involved so heavily in book selling, what is selling right now in India?
Everything.
Yeah, what is selling more? Are there
No,
specific
no, I think
genres,
I think
subjects?
we are such a diverse country, right? In terms of our social backgrounds, our educational backgrounds, our exposure, our budgets, right? So it's very difficult to say this is selling or that is not selling, right? Or this is selling more and that is selling lesser. Yeah, there's a skew towards non-fiction, which a lot of publishers say that a lot of non-fiction sells, which is self-help books and business books and all these motivational books and all that are kind of doing well. But I think fiction is selling in good numbers. And for me, I keep telling everyone, like non-fiction, you read mostly for keeping yourself informed and kind of getting some perspectives and stuff like that. But it's really fiction which is elevating, because fiction is where you kind of get totally immersed, right? And where you get you kind of go into a different kind of a creative land, a different world altogether, and that becomes habit forming, that becomes addictive. Because while there'll be exceptions, but you really can't get addicted to reading business books or history books or self-help books and stuff like that. And I shouldn't be saying that as a bookseller, which can be detrimental to my own cause, but I tell people that you keep buying so many self-help books and motivational books and business books, but really it's just a handful of books where all the insights that you're looking for, it can be distilled in just a couple of books. And if you just follow the advice of those first few books that you've read, right, you'll be fine. But we kind of, we don't want to come out of that little hole that we dug for ourselves. And we keep saying, oh, we need more information, we need more knowledge, we need more, education, right? But really go and, it's like I tell people, when you go to a cinema hall, like, do you go to watch documentaries or do you go to watch pure entertainment? Likewise for books, right? And so in fact, we've created these different book clubs and all, and one of them is a CEO book club, right? And we are telling CEOs or corporate executives that this does not mean that you only read business books, because for your overall development, we suggest, yes, you read business books, but you read biographies, you read history, you read fiction, you read comics, you read everything.
Yeah, you can't read in a silo. You can't even have knowledge in a silo, right?
Yeah,
because you don't know.
Yeah, because I said on a day-to-day basis, what are you looking for? You're looking for that calmness in your mind and heart. You're looking for that you're looking at kind of bring that creative side of you up. You're looking to be happy. You're looking to be at peace with yourself. And just by reading one business book after another is not going to help you do that.
So is there how much curation is involved in the Kunzum bookstores, in terms of the way the books that you sell, how you choose, and also I think how the books are placed? Do you think that, it requires a lot more curation where you kind of really pick and choose what you want people to read, or do you more go by, providing as much variety as possible or giving as many options, or do you go by sort of what is best selling, what is popular according to, overall in India and also international?
So while we have to follow some kind of norms, like highlighting bestsellers and award winners and new releases and all, right? But really what my personal outlook in curation, when I say curation in terms of both the selection of titles that we keep in our stores and the way we display them, is helping people discover stuff they were not looking for. Right? So that they are kind of their reading portfolio becomes more diverse, right? And when they read that stuff, and if they're happy with our recommendations, they that's how loyalty will build in, because they say, you know what, we went to Kunzum and we discovered stuff which we were not even aware of, right? And it was such a great experience. I'm going to go back and pick up books from Kunzum itself. Yeah. So for us, that discovery is key.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of brick and mortar bookstores, because I think with Amazon it's a lot of, oh, if you like this you will like this, and it's just about showing the similar books, or obviously you go there and it's just the bestsellers, which are sort of the most popular ones. But with bookstores, I think there is so much curation, right? There is so much of this discovery or suggesting or showcasing books that you would not otherwise have heard of or even know
Exactly.
about unless you go to the bookstore and you kind of see. I think that is
Absolutely.
what kind of also makes, bookstores in that sense
Absolutely.
important.
No, absolutely.
Do you
Absolutely.
think about this whole, brick and mortar versus Amazon debate? This whole thing about how because of Amazon, books are, like brick and mortar bookstores are not being able to sell or independent bookstores are suffering, and whether Amazon sales are going to take over completely the book sales in India. What is your opinion on this?
Um, if I can make a very strong statement, right? I think Amazon is a very toxic force to our societal and cultural development, simply because of discounting, right?
Yeah.
What they're doing is, while there are some arguments that, oh, because of Amazon, books are able to reach places where there are no bookstores and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, Amazon is largely cannibalizing into a market that already exists. But market expands through culture, and culture can only happen in bookstores, right? They're where people meet, they talk books and they get more interested. They've gone to buy 2 books and they come back with 4 books, and they meet authors and they meet other readers, right? That's where the market expands. Now, what happens is there are 2 things that are happening on Amazon, right? One is discounting and one is rampant piracy, right? So many books, and authors are getting books, they're ordering their own books and getting pirated copies of their own books. Right. The other day, somebody tweeted that he went to Dr. Shashi Tharoor to get a book written by him, and Dr. Tharoor refused. He said it's a pirated copy.
How are they pirating these copies? And how do you
So,
know
so, so,
that
so,
it's a pirated copy?
no, so Amazon is not pirating, but because it's a marketplace, people are pirating books. They're selling on
Right.
that platform, and they're getting delivered. I've received pirated books. Everybody's getting pirated books,
But how do
right?
you identify that a book is pirated for people
But
who are buying books of Amazon?
maybe a layperson might not realize it, but people
Yeah.
who are in the industry, they know it's a pirated copy. You look at it and you know it. I can tell you it's a pirated copy, right? Even though I'm not so much on the publishing side of the business. So
Right.
a couple of years back, the same problem was happening in France. So they enacted a law where they have debarred Amazon from discounting books, because their logic was that by discounting books, if they sound the death knell of bookstores, it will be detrimental to the culture of the country, right? And so likewise with Amazon, right? What happens is, when they're discounting, right? People get used to asking for discounts even in bookstores, right?
Yeah.
And if
Or
you
they
start,
think it's a negotiation, you can
yeah,
haggle and be like, oh, this
yeah,
is too high a cost. Can you reduce it a little bit?
yeah. And then what happens is, when your margins get reduced, because brick and mortar stores have a high overhead, there are heavy rentals, there are electricity costs, there are other utilities, there are salaries to be paid, there are promotions to be done. It's a very it's a very expensive business to run, right? And if you start discounting 10, 15, 20%, that's straight away going out of your margins, right? So sooner than later, the authorities will have to take action against Amazon. And I think some of us, if nobody else, at least I intend to, the moment I get some time myself, probably move the Competition Commission that this is an unfair trade practice. Yeah. So if Amazon is not there, or Amazon is not discounting books, I can guarantee you many, many more bookstores will come up, and readership in society will actually expand.
Yeah. No, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but what you mentioned the flip side as well, because this is the argument that I see, which is that because of Amazon, a lot of smaller towns or villages where there are no bookstores, are getting access to books and books are getting delivered there. And what about the readers there? I think that becomes a question, which then obviously if Amazon doesn't exist, there will be, because there will be readers there, and there'll be a market there for bookstores to come up. But
But
also I think, yeah.
so I'm saying that worldwide, right? Villages, small towns, they all had bookstores, including India, right?
You're saying that
But
they used to exist but have shut down because of Amazon.
Amazon, I won't say 100% because of Amazon. There are, of course,
Yeah.
other factors also. right? But people may feel, oh, there aren't enough people. People are not buying enough books because they've got distracted by social media and OTT and so many other forms of distraction and entertainment, right? But so that's Amazon is not the only force that is causing these bookstores to close. But the fact is, it's a major reason. And now, because I see an uptick in reading, right, and with educational levels, or let's say literacy levels going up, greater awareness of about books, and a fatigue setting in, watching the television screen or your mobile screen, right? I think a lot of people are now suddenly realizing, hey, we need to go back to books. So, and people will still get the books no matter what. Like I said, Amazon can exist, right? But they can't discount.
Makes sense. So going back to, obviously one of your core identities, I think, is traveling. You're a traveler, you write about traveling. Travel was how you came up with Kunzum as the name and the idea as well. How much does travel feature into the books, and the curation? Like, do you have a lot of travel books? Do you think that it is important, whether it is books about travel writing or whether it is books just sort of showcasing different locations? Do you think that that is an important part of, your outlook towards Kunzum as bookstores?
I think if you look at travel books, one is your travel guides. I think there's like a slowdown on that front, and rightly so, because travel is such a dynamic field, right? And you get so much information online that a travel guide in its earlier format is not necessarily a necessity anymore. So we also don't keep too many travel guides, but travel literature, right? When I said literature, it could be long form writing, whether by the kinds of Bill Bryson and all, or you talk about photographic books and all. I think they still have a value. We do stock them, and I would like more travel literature to come out, but we don't see too much of it coming out that we can promote. So there is a little supply side issue, and but I think again, if you start reading books, right? Somebody rightly pointed out something to this effect, that basically books are also a form of travel. So every book that you pick up and read, you are actually traveling to another world. And I can say that actually, personally, two career/personal choices that I made was first to be in the travel space as a traveler, and now being in the book space. I think these are the, what else can somebody ask for? Just good coffee with it. Yeah.
That's fair. You've also done so many things, like you mentioned, you did sports management, you did journalism, you have degrees in engineering, management, you are a traveler, you're a writer. How do all of these identities merge into each other? Do you think that, or has your experience with, say, sports management, somehow influenced the decisions you make with bookselling? Like, how do you kind of integrate all of these identities into one person who works 20 hours a day?
So I think all of these, because you see life from different perspectives, you see life from different vantage points, you meet so many varied people, you like this, so many exchange of ideas and information. So somewhere through osmosis, that's, something changes within you, right? And that's why, I may not be able to kind of have a very in-depth discussion about a lot of subjects, but I can feel at home, or I can feel comfortable in a lot of discussions where, because of the varied exposure that I've got.
Yeah, it's right? Like a breadth of knowledge.
Yeah, right. So I could be, sitting with, and that's why when I got into publishing, right, because I was also self-publishing my books, and because I was in the book space, I'd been making an effort to know people within the creative space and stuff like that. So for me, like it wasn't like something, I didn't just walk into a dark cave and, I didn't need to figure my way out around. Yeah, there was a lot of technicalities involved. There were a lot of nuances involved, which you had to learn, and I'm still learning. But the fact is that all of these varied experiences like gives you a different kind of your DNA mutates, right?
Yeah.
And it gives you a little different kind of a worldview. And I won't say I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. I can say I'm like somewhere in between.
Master of some, jack of many.
So it's and like I said earlier, like why keep doing the same thing all your life? Like you'll work 35 years in Microsoft or in the IT space to one day be the CEO of Microsoft. Okay, fine. And then what?
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, and you bring in all of these experiences, right, into whatever you do. I think it's very interesting because, whoever, a lot of people that I've spoken to, especially for this, podcast, they've all had so varied experiences. Like most of them don't have a direct path, okay, they studied whatever or did English literature or whatever, and then they got into publishing. They have such varied sort of economics, finance, journalism, or just paths where they did a lot of different things and then somehow ended up in publishing to kind of work with books. And obviously then the work they do is so defined by all of these experiences they have, all the expertise that they bring in. So I think in that sense, it's a very interesting industry because, the more in that sense experience you have, the more you're able to look at also that book from a variety of different ways rather than just, the book itself, which I think is very interesting. Obviously, you were doing a lot of different things before you got into bookselling, right, with the bookstores. What is a fact or what is, something that you do as a bookseller that you were highly unprepared for and did not expect that you would have to do?
I'll have to think of that because I did go into it with my eyes open. Right. And I think it's early days for us, right? But I think I didn't think that I would need to do so much consumer marketing. I thought once you set up good stores with good curation and all, right? While one might say, okay, there aren't so many people reading books, right? But there's still a significant number. But I think we still need to do a lot of marketing to bring people in into the stores and get them to pick up books and all. I think that's one thing which the curve is longer than what I expected it to be.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
What are you? Because obviously you've written a lot of books and across different subjects in a way. Does your experience as a writer influence your book selling in any way?
I think so, because see, actually it goes back to my journalism training, because as a journalist, one of the things I learned that one of the first beats that I was given to cover was pharmaceuticals, right? And I was like I was sitting with my subjects and they were like rattling off chemical names and all that, and I couldn't make sense of it, and I had to go back and give my editor the story, right? And that's where I learned that that as a journalist, how do you kind of cover almost any subject, right, without necessarily having like a background in that subject? How do you research? How do you put together stories? How do you kind of present them to your audience? And that's what helped me write books across different genres. And because of my, again, varied experience, and both as a reader and as a writer, right? So when I look at the store, while some genres I may not be comfortable talking about, but largely I find myself at ease curating collections from of all kinds of books. While I have my colleagues who kind of deep dive, but I'm comfortable giving the bigger picture.
Okay, nice. Are you currently writing something? Are you writing your next book?
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm ideating how to write a book on my journey, right? Okay. As Kunzum or as Kunzum the bookstores, I'm thinking of that. But I'm also writing a book on climate fiction, which is something which is very close to my heart. And so these are, and I've got a lot of book projects in different stages of ideation. And a lot of them actually started pre-pandemic and during the pandemic. So if you see my files out here, you'll see at least 15
10
books.
book ideas, 15 book
Yeah,
ideas.
15 books, different ideas. And I just need to, so I've been actually telling myself for the past few weeks that now I need to, while the last year and a half has been very, very hectic in setting up and operationalizing these stores, I need to now take a little kind of step back and start giving more time to my own writing. And while systems keep, make sure the systems are running the stores.
Yeah. Makes sense. You got to go back to your love.
Yeah.
Writing and write more books.
Absolutely.
What do you as a reader like to read?
Oh, very clearly, I enjoy fiction.
Yes.
Right.
What is there any specific fiction?
While I like all kinds of fiction, but I think I particularly like fiction which are more human stories. Right. I've never really read science fiction for that matter. For example, while I've read enough crime fiction, I'm not particularly drawn to picking up those books. But stories about humans, human relationships, where we go down to like kind of call it the first principles of our existence. So, which means a story written could have been written this year or could have been written 100 years ago. But as human beings, as human stories, right? They stay true for forever.
Yeah.
Right. The settings might be different, right? The characters 100 years ago might be on horseback, and today they might be on a Harley Davidson. But within, as human beings, they're still the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a book that came out maybe this year that you think is, underappreciated, that you think readers should read in India?
I'm not sure I can answer that. And one thing that I don't, I never kind of talk about are, too much of literary stuff. I don't have any literary airs. I don't, say, oh, read this and read that, or, I read this. So, so I avoid questions, unless something very, very specific comes to my mind, right? So I don't think, again, when I pick up books, very often I don't even look at the timeline. I don't even see when they were published.
Okay, can I ask you, what are you reading right now?
I'm just going to start reading Yellow Face today.
Yeah.
And yes, today. And
let me know how it is, because so
yeah.
many people have been reading it. I've been seeing so much about it.
And just day before yesterday night, I finished Rules of Civility. So and so I didn't want to start a book the next day itself. I'm soaking that book in because I love the book so much.
Processing it.
Yeah. But I'm going to start reading Yellow Face today.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think is the future of bookstores in India? Like, what do you think is going to happen, say, 5 years down the line?
I think, I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. Kunzum will be there. We might be 5 stores, we might be 50 stores, that I don't know, right? There are going to be certain bookstores which have stood the test of time, who've been there for decades, and they will stay because of the locations they are in, the way they run their business, the way they have that captive audience that's going to stay. But upstarts, I'm not sure, right? And I think they will do, there is room for many, many, many more bookstores to come up, right? Thousands of bookstores can come up in India without affecting the sales of the existing bookstores. But I think as a society at large, and as individuals, as entrepreneurs, we all need to see how do we make these bookstores kind of destinations for society to kind of congregate. We need to do that. And for that, we need to popularize reading. People who are influencers, when I say influencers, I'm talking about well-known authors, even well-known personalities who are not necessarily authors themselves, but they read books. They need to go and start talking about the value of reading, what they're reading, how are they enjoying books, stuff like that, right? If you have the icons of today, whether they're film stars, they're models, they're cricket stars, sports stars, if they're talking about, hey, I'm reading this book today, even political leaders, popular political leaders, right? If they say, I'm reading this book, or I'm reading books in general, a lot more people are going to want to kind of read books themselves, right? So we need to have these conversations in the public domain that, hey, books are vital to us, right? So both as forms of entertainment and also as forms of personal development. right? So, and if that happens, then there can be like 100 bookstores in Delhi, and we will not feel any competitive pressure because there'll be enough of a market for all of us.
Yeah. And I think, yes, reading books and also discussing books, right? Like,
Yeah,
what did you think about this? What did I think about this? I think
exactly.
there's so much of this that happens around movies, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Barbie and Oppenheimer, like
yeah,
fully immersed in the whole like
yeah,
Barbenheimer, marketing sort of frenzy
yeah,
of it. But thinking of books like that, where it's like people are, reading the book and then kind of discussing it and having a lot more discourse around what did you think, and these were, the parts I liked or didn't like. Obviously, this
yeah,
does happen about books, and
yeah,
there are book reviews, but I think it is still a little siloed.
yeah,
So I think normalizing those kind of discussions as
yeah,
everyday conversations, I think would also be great in terms of
absolutely.
people sort of talking about books overall. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
What is your advice for people who want to say enter the publishing industry today? They want to work with books, they love books, and they're trying to figure out what their niche or their space within the industry would be.
I think very importantly, you have to set the bar very, very high, right? You want to be, the enthusiasm is fine, the commitment is fine, right? You've got the right training, you've got the right college, you've got the right training, you've got the right apprenticeship, everything. But the thing is, like I said earlier, the benchmark is the global best, right? And if you can't raise yourself to that level, right, then it's a lost cause. And and that's one thing in India that we need to kind of keep reminding ourselves again and again and again, that there is nothing that you cannot compromise the pursuit of excellence, right?
Yeah.
So just because and I see so much stuff coming out, not just within the books industry, but across industries, across sectors, right, which is not even close to the global best, right? But we need to, like, you want to write books, you want to be a publisher, you want to be an editor, right? Go and do whatever it requires to get the best books out, and then have the will and the resources to also market them well. Otherwise, don't do this.
Yeah, like compete with the top international books or the publishers or the professionals or whatever, instead of being like, okay, this is what is happening in India, and I just need to be the big fish in the small pond.
And then tens of thousands of books are getting published in India currently, right? They're going to all these self-publishing platforms. They're going to platforms which basically charge you to publish your books, but the quality, unfortunately, is so disappointing, right? Then why are we doing this, right from the cover design to the text inside to the way it's edited? Why would, beyond a vanity project, why would you publish a book?
That's very interesting, because you have also, I mean, technically self-published a lot of your books, right, under the Kunzum imprint. But you didn't go the traditional route with them. So
so the thing is, I had that little bit of self-confidence because I have a grounding in this area, right? In terms of writing and editing and all, I have a grounding, right? But most people who are first-time authors, right, they're coming from diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, and again, it's that quality, right? They don't know, okay, even from self-publishing, it needs to have this.
Absolutely.
This is the quality that, like, literally the material and the paper and the book should have. This is the quality that the writing should have, the cover art should have.
So when I wrote my books, I invested in good designers, I invested in good editors, I invested in good printing. So I did all that. But one has, because, like I said, because I have a background, even if not traditionally book publishing, but at least in content, right? So so unless you have that background, and even now I feel that I have many miles to go in terms of the quality that I put out there, right? So so I think my advice is, it's a great and an important space to be in, but really raise the bar.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I definitely agree with you. 100%. And thank you so much, Ajay, for coming.
Thanks for having me over.
To me about books and everything Kunzum is doing. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to do next, whether you stay at 5, whether you have 100 stores, whether you come to Mumbai, which definitely I'm looking forward to. So thank you so much for coming on the book.
At least for timing, you can come to Delhi and visit us
Yes.
till we don't come to Bombay.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So when I come to Delhi, I will 100% come to one of
Done.
the Kunzum stores. I will ask you which one.
Done.
Show up at that one as well.
Done.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for having me over.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Book People. I'm Aishwarya Javalgekar. I'm a writer, book editor, and podcast producer. If you have any specific topics that you think I should cover, or if you have certain people in mind that you really think I should speak to, then definitely reach out to me at aishwarya@boundindia.com. And if you want to know anything about book editing, about Bound's book services, or how you can grow your brand as an author, then you can definitely reach out to me for that as well. In the meantime, keep creating, keep writing, and keep being the book people.